All right, so I'll post the video on YouTube as we usually do, and then put it up on the our blog, our Google Club blog. All right, so I'm going to put the slides link again in the chat, and now we're going to kick it off. So today we are looking, as many of you I think have been coming to several of these. The kind of frame we're using this year for Google Club is the skills and tool knowledge that is required for the Google Educator Level 1 certification. And this is a certification you take on your own. It costs $10. You sign up for it, and then you have, I think, 180 minutes to take it. I took it. It didn't take that long, but you have the luxury of that amount of time if you need it, and then you can also get done earlier. It's all multiple choice, but many of the questions are a little tricky where you have to say which one isn't an example, or identify 3 of the examples. So you have to make sure you read your questions. There's absolutely no requirement that you take the Google Educator Level 1 certification, and that may not be something you're at all interested in, but we thought it was a useful way to think through all the tools that Google has that they think are useful for teachers. The Google Educator Level 1 certification is kind of based on the idea that you are using Google Workspace for Education, which Workspace is the same thing as G Suite, if you remember that from a few years ago. If you're using all the Google tools, you basically have very similar access. So it's fine for us in adult education. Most of us are not accessing that version of Workspace. But your agency, my agency, uses Google Workspace as one of our ways of sharing information, and maybe you're doing that too. So you'll see that all the tools are things that you have available either in a consumer account, which is the Gmail version that most of us have, the personal kind of account, or if your work or your life somehow gets you connected to a workspace, then you're have access to them as well, but with slightly different settings. So, having said all that, we are in meeting 4, and the focus of this meeting is on managing time effectively. And the tools that they are looking at are Calendar, Tasks, and Keep. And I asked folks as they were coming in to think about which one they were most interested in, and it seems, I think Tasks was mentioned, we'll get there, but it seemed like everybody was kind of like, we want to learn all of them anyway. So we'll probably just go in this order. After today, if you want more information or you want to try learning more about this than we covered today, or you need a refresher, there is always on slide 5 this link to the Skillshop, which is where Google has put together their lesson ideas for these tools. And I've been using their framework or their outline to make sure we cover all the pieces that they are going to cover, but we'll probably get to other pieces as you guys bring up questions or as I share things that I know I do, or you share things that you know you do. Just a quick reminder that we do have Google Club once a month, and the next one will be on giving digital feedback and managing learner work, and then the one in March will be using Google Forms, sheets, and slides to measure progress. So again, we cover all the tools, and then the focus comes from what they will look at the minimum, what they look at in the certificate exam. Okay, so these are our 3 tools for today, and as usual, I kind of want to make a point of underscoring or having you notice these icons, because as you notice the icons, you'll notice that they will start to appear in my tabs along the top. So whenever we have a Google tool open I'm using Google Chrome, and I'm logged into Google Chrome, so I can see my little face here, or you might see your initial. I have my Google Drive, so I have that little icon I can see there, and then I have the slides. This is actually from last time. I'm going to get rid of those, and these are the slides for today. If I open up my calendar, I'm going to see that little icon here, Tasks similarly, and Google Keep also. So these are the icons that we want to look for. And yellow is interesting because we do see that Google Slides is yellow, but these are quite different. So Google Keep is kind of like a light bulb, I think is their idea. Now, when you're looking at my screen, right now we are in my Slides application. If I go to my Drive, you'll see that we're in my Drive application. Do you see anywhere here already the icons for calendar, keep, and tasks? And feel free to just unmute and say yes, or you can put it in the chat. I'll look at the chat too. But anywhere here on the screen, do you see those icons? Don't be shy. It might be very small. Let me try magnifying. Oops, that did not magnify. Sorry. Stop sharing for a second. Ah, thank you. Sorry, I didn't see the chat. So Nora says yes on the side. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to open that back up again. I don't know why it closed out like that, but okay. So yes, the let me just get us back. So this is something relatively new, and I don't know that I was really noticing it until I was getting ready for this session. But yes, down the side, on the right side, we have this little control bar, and indeed, the icons that are there by default, these are not ones that I can really change. They just sit there. We have calendar, we have keep, and we have tasks. Same when I'm in my Drive, I have calendar, keep, and tasks, and contacts. If I go to my Gmail, so I'm going to go to Gmail. I have it down here, but I'm also just going to type it in. Can anyone tell me what is the one way we know we can get to all of the most of the Google tools? If we wanted to type it into the Omnibox up here, how would you type? What would you type? How would you get there to open up your Gmail? If you were not using the launcher over here and you weren't using any of these other shortcuts, then I'm going to open up
mail.google.com.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. So one of the things we've noticed is that most tools, if you know the name of the tool, in this case it's Gmail, but if we know it's mail, so mail.google.com. And you can just test it out. Like I said, I don't say every tool because usually there's at least one thing that'll break that. But the reality is everything I've ever tried, it does work as long as you know the name of the tool. So in this case, that's the trick. It's not gmail.google.com. It is mail.google.com. But when you open up mail.google.com, or you clicked on the little launcher or whatever, you're going to see that that is the URL up at the top there. And in this case, that's funny. So I'm not seeing it. So my colleague, Cynthia, when I was talking to her today, she sees that dialog box down the side, or not dialog box, toolbox down the side, and on Gmail, and not on Drive. So that was kind of interesting. So we're seeing slightly different things. So we have Gmail. When we're in Gmail, let's see here. There's definitely supposed to be a way you're supposed to see chat. Let's see if it does it this way. No. All right. I don't know. That's very funny. Because she said she sees it, I thought I would see it too. Okay, so it is important because Gmail does fit in with this in the sense that you can send invites from your calendar. Just like if you're familiar with Outlook, you can send. So in Outlook, from my calendar in Outlook, I often send invites to people which end up going out through my email. And the same thing can be done here too. Okay, so mail.google.com got us to Gmail. What do we think? Calendar. How would we get to calendar? I'm going to try it out. I'm going to guess that I can type calendar.
.google.com.
There you go. So again, it's fantastic. If you already feel very comfortable getting to calendar, maybe you're, like I said, you're going through the launcher over here, or you're doing it another way, there's nothing wrong. But I want everyone to just notice that we have that ability. So whenever we know the name of the tool, we can just type it in, and sometimes that's faster than other things. So this is my calendar. Right now I'm in the dark view, but I can change that to the light view. That might be more familiar to you. So when we're looking at calendar, the one of the things I think that's special about Google Calendar compared to, for example, Outlook Calendar, other calendar tools that I know of, is that you basically are creating layers. You can have multiple calendars. So you see over here on the side that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 calendars. Um, and they call them calendars, but they're really layers, and it means I can turn them on and off, and I can change what I see here. So right now I'm seeing only the Nell Eckersley calendar. So everything here is part of the Nell Eckersley calendar. If I go to now this one's gonna, so if most of these I don't have a lot in, but suddenly if I click on the LAC staff office calendar, it's very, very busy, right? There's a lot of other people's, this is a shared calendar with my colleagues. And so this shows me everything everybody's doing. And that can be a little overwhelming, right? So it's nice that I can turn it on and off. You just want to make sure that you know that you can do that. And here we see we have tasks as an option. So if I click on tasks, anything that I've put in my task calendar that I have assigned a date to should show up here. So we're in March. Let's go back to January. So I have 2 tasks listed here. I can tell they're tasks because they're blue and they have that little icon on them. So from my calendar, we do see that we have that again down the side. We have those icons that quickly can move me from one thing to another. We're in calendar. I see the Google Keep icon, I see the tasks icon, I see contacts, and I see maps. So that's what they give you when you're in your calendar. If I want to see my tasks from here, I have 2 ways to do that. I can click on tasks from here, or I have actually up here a toggle. So right now, the view that I'm looking at is my calendar. But if I click on the tasks toggle side, I'm going to see a big full view of my tasks. If I do it from the side, I go back to my calendar and then I click on tasks here, I'm going to see them down the side, and there's not going to be, I'm only going to see one at a time. I can move between them. But here are the 2 tasks that I put in here, and they're showing up here. If I want to add another task, I click here. Maybe I need to finish scoring essay homework. I can write some details here if I want to, or not. And then I can put in a date that it's due. So I need to get this done by the 29th. I'm not going to set a time, and I'm going to click done. And sure enough, there it shows up on my 29th. So by putting things in tasks with a date assigned to them, you will see them in the calendar that is labeled tasks. And I see there's something in the chat. Okay, gotcha, Michael. Again, we're making a recording of this, so it'll be up on the YouTube and on our blog if you need to look at any of this again in a different setting. So that's kind of a nice connection between these two. And I don't actually see that in a lot of other tools. So you can definitely pay money for things like there are productivity tools out there that will connect these things, but this is free, and this is a built-in connection between the tasks and your calendar. If I need to make a new calendar, so one of the things that I just said was that the staff calendar is a shared calendar, right? So you can create a calendar that you share with other people, whether it's with your students. So there could be a calendar that has all the homework assignments on them. And you could even do that by putting the homework assignments into your task list and having them automatically show up in the calendar. So the way that we do that, if we have a calendar that we want to share, So let's see, I'm going to create a new one to start with. So we know that in Google, that plus sign is a good tip that probably can make a new one, right? So plus generally means, and we also see that up here, right? So I could click this as well. Here I could do event, task, or appointment schedule. Down here is where I can add a new calendar. So I get to subscribe to somebody else's calendar. I get to create a new calendar. I can browse calendars of interest, right? So maybe some organization I know, like the LEC doesn't do this with our workshops, but you know, the LEC could have all their workshops on a calendar and you could subscribe to that. We don't want to do that one. Sorry. Click out of there. We want to create a new one. So I get to give it a name. We're going to call it Google Club. And I'm not going to give a description. I'm just going to go ahead and create it. So now Google Club is over here. I'm in settings. Automatically, when I clicked on make a new one, it took me over to settings. I can get out of settings. So another thing to notice is one of the ways to move around sometimes when you don't know how did you get here and how do you get back. That arrow is a good tip that we can go back one level. So I can see Google Club is listed here. As I scroll over it, I get those 3 dots. And when I click on the 3 dots, I can actually change the color. So it's very helpful to have the colors be very different from one another, or something that you can remember. It just adds to what you can see on here, right? So tasks are blue, and therefore they're blue here. If I make Google Club this pink color, oops, we kind of have, well, we'll go with that. And now, because I'm viewing that, I can go in here and make a new event. So we're going to say, let's do it down here. I'm going to say that I need to post recording. So this is an event. I could create a task from here as well, but I'm just doing the event. Here's where I can tell it if I want it to be on a different calendar. So this can be confusing when you have a lot of calendars. You know, how do you know where you're putting what calendar is this event going on to? So by default, it was this one, but I can here change that, right? So I can choose from any of my calendars here. Hi, Lauren. We're just talking about Google Calendar. I'll share the link to the slides in a moment. Okay, so I see the question, how would you add birthday reminder on a calendar? So we will do that. Thank you. That's a great question. This could even be that, right? So if we make this, we're going to say Nell's birthday, or Nell birthday. And Nell's birthday, we can change it so that it is on 31st. We want it to start on the 31st and on the 31st. It's the whole day. And we want to repeat it. So here we can say annually on January 31st. And we can change it from Google Club to, I think I have a birthdays calendar in here. Yeah, but it's not showing up. So I guess, okay, we'll come back to look at that. But I can add it to my calendar, right? And we can make that event a different color. And I can even set a reminder. I can say, I want you to remind me, you know, I want to send a card, so I need at least 4 days. So we're going to say, with our mail system, I'm going to go with 5 days. And we're going to click done. And so now and you could even have another notification if you know you need another reminder, and then you click save. So now Nell's birthday is here, and if I was to look next year, my birthday would also be there. Let's see. We'll go to February of 2000. Oops. There I am, right? So it's going to show that, and you can see these are birthdays I've set up before that are on my calendar. If I get rid of them, they're gone. This birthday's one, I'm not sure where it's grabbing them from somewhere else. So I think this is being grabbed from my contacts. Let's see if I can edit it. Yeah, so it's grabbing, if you use Google, if you use Gmail and you're saving all your contacts in Gmail, or you're using the contacts, like my phone is a Google phone, so the contacts in my phone are technically Google contacts. If I was to go in there and in the individual person's information, I include their birthday, then they will automatically show up on my calendar if I have a birthday calendar set up there. But to do it manually, you would do it the way that I just did it, where you create an event, and it doesn't have to be birthdays, right? It could be every week on Tuesdays there's a meeting, or once a month on the last Thursday there's a meeting. So all of those ways of having recurring events pop up, you can do. Hi, Lauren. So we asked folks actually, let me just grab the link to the slides while I take a moment here. Are there other questions about calendar? How many of you use an electronic calendar? Because I end up, so because we are Googly at work, but we also use Outlook, I tend to use the Outlook calendar for most of my work reminders. So Michael, do you know what calendar? Is that an iPhone? So it's like an Apple calendar, or I think a lot of people end up using the calendar that is available to them on their phone, and depending on the phone you have, it's going to be probably the default that your phone came with. So yeah, and people have very strong feelings, right? So Lauren says she uses Google, she doesn't like Outlook. We had a lot of not issues, but we had some discussion at work because there were people who were for their personal lives were using their Google Calendar, and Google Calendar and Outlook worked one way to, like, you could connect them together one direction but not the other. And so if an event was created in Outlook, you could share it to Google, or vice versa, but you couldn't do the opposite. And that was frustrating for people because it is something. So if you come to use your calendar a lot, it is something that you use a lot and you rely on it. And to suddenly have to use a different system can be very frustrating. So if you're someone who is using Gmail, yeah, so I see, right? We have Teams calendars, we have Outlook, we have Google Calendar. I actually use a paper calendar too. So I have my calendar here, but I also still put stuff in my Google Calendar, not my Google Calendar, my Outlook calendar. So when I invite people, if we're going to have a meeting together, I do that in my Outlook, so it goes out as an email. So you can decide what process you want to use. One of the benefits of using Google Calendar as a teacher is that you can share a calendar with your learners, and you can use that as a place to put homework assignments. Even if you're not using the full Google Classroom LMS, you could just have a calendar and they could know to come back and look at that, to click on a link and get to the homework for that day or whatever. Lauren says she uses on her phone. Yes. Yes. Interesting. So Michael says that Apple allows you to split the hours of each day and lets me plan your days out. Right. So we get familiar with ways to do things, and they work for us. I guess one of the places I always think about bringing in new technology is when you aren't happy with what is going on. So I'm having seen this connection between the tasks and the calendar, that's intriguing to me. One of my challenges, I'm not going to remember the name of it now. We were just listening to a podcast where the guy was interviewing someone who has written 2 books basically about how we can never be as productive as we want to be, and that there's some freedom in acknowledging that, and I'll find the links and I'll put them in the slides for us later on. And so I'm trying to balance that, right? There is a sense that somehow there is this holy grail. One day I will be so efficient and things will be so smooth. And in reality, that's probably never going to happen. And even if it did happen, it would happen for one moment and then there would still be chaos afterwards. So Lauren says that Google Classroom or Applied Digital Skills would remind me. Yeah, so both we're looking at these tools individually. If you are using Google Classroom, and here you're mentioning also Applied Digital Skills, which has a sort of mini classroom class manager in it, that both of those allow you to, they give you basically a calendar and the ability to create notifications. So, if you're using those with your learners, you don't need anything else. But if you're not using one of the big, the full Google Classroom, as I mentioned, you could still just have this one thing for them. And it's something to notice for learners, right? Or for anybody in the world, that if they don't know there is an electronic way to do this, they don't even have the option to try it out. So talking a little bit about Calendar and how Calendar works might be useful for your learners. So we're again in the calendar screen. We can toggle between calendar and tasks. We can change the way that we see. So right now we have a month view here. We also saw that we could change light to dark. We could print out the calendar. If I want to, so we added a new calendar. Now, if I wanted to share this calendar with all of you, right, I can go to settings and sharing. So if you did want this to be something that all your learners could access, you come down here, you can either make it public or you can just get the shareable link. So if I copy this and I give it to you all in the chat, you should all be able to. Now, you don't need to if you don't want to, because what's going to happen is it's going to open up. Oh, it doesn't want to do it. Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So if you click on that, it's going to open up the calendar and then it's going to show in your list of calendars. Okay, so Nabi has a question about Gmail. We'll get there. Thanks for putting that in the chat though. Okay, so I've got the shareable link, so I'm sharing that with the whole group of you. I also could share with specific people. Sometimes that is more what you want to be able to do. You want to give people different abilities in the calendar. You can set it up so that there are notifications. There's either a beep or it comes out through your Gmail. Yeah, so you can track all these things. You could create a website and have the calendar embedded in there. So again, say you already using a Google website and you want to have your learners are all coming there anyway, you could embed this calendar by copying this embed code and pasting it into your Google site. You can, so this is I think iCal is the Apple version, and you can have these guys talk to each other. So I have never done that. So you'll see it here, but it's something you can do. And then you can either unsubscribe or delete. So if you do open the link, and you decide after you did that that's just annoying to have it sitting there, when I go back to, again, we go back to that little arrow to get out of settings. When I see a calendar that I don't want a connection to anymore, I have the option here of hiding it from list, or let's see, settings and sharing. I can come down here and if I'm the owner of it, I can delete. So if you don't see the option of deleting, that means that you are not the owner. Only the owner will see delete. If you're not the owner, but you still don't want to see it, you could either hide it on that first setting, or you could click on unsubscribe. And that just basically breaks that connection between you and that calendar. Any questions about calendar? I'm going to actually go ahead and delete the Google. Well, let's see. Did anybody try it out? And are you seeing it in your calendar? I won't delete it yet. You guys get to play a little bit with it, but I will get rid of it because we don't need that. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and just see if there are any other questions. All right, so I'm just looking through the chat. And Nabiha, your question, my Gmail always gives me the message that the mailbox is full. Doesn't matter how many I delete, it's still there. So one thing I'll say about Google, let me share my screen, sorry. I was gonna start doing it without sharing it. One thing about all the Google tools, when you delete something, it does just go sit in the trash. And I don't know, Nabiha, if you've tried emptying your trash. So if I wanted to get rid of all of these, and then I go down to, where's my trash? Sorry, I have my settings in a weird place here. So I had to click on the more to see my trash. And if I go to my trash, they're still there. They're supposed to be emptied every 30 days, but you could empty the trash now. Until you empty it, they are still taking up memory. And I'm going to check in the chat to see if you've done that piece. Oh, you've tried that as well. We're going to probably have to Google that one because that shouldn't be an issue unless you've really, really used up your Google, like your memory in general. So you can see here that I have a lot of gigabytes because I'm paying for extra memory, but the default for the free personal account is 15 gigs. And it could be that your memory is used up somewhere else. What you'll find, so until probably 3 or 4 years ago, when you were in your drive and you had made something using a Google tool, it didn't even show you a file size because it didn't subtract that from your memory. But starting about 4 or 5 years ago, it could be longer even now, everything you do does take up memory. So what you'll want to do is see how you're doing with your memory in general. And then you just want to delete or download. Often it's images take up lots of memory, or maybe you have saved recordings or videos. So check on that. See if your memory in general is being pushed to the limit. If not, I think we would just Google why, Google or Gmail says it's full when it isn't. How do I fix that? So let me see that you have in the chat. You're very welcome. Okay, so we have looked at Calendar, which is a rich tool. And you actually, something we're not covering today really, because I don't ever do it, is you can also, so we looked at how you can have tasks show up in your calendar. You can also create tasks from Gmail. So if there's a Gmail message that you received that is a task, you can connect it to tasks. But I've never done it, so I'm not going to demonstrate it right now. So we looked at Calendar. We looked at how to create an event on a calendar. We looked at creating a new calendar. We looked at sharing the calendar. We didn't really we set the reminders, but we're not going to experience the reminder going off. So the reminder can be an email, it can be a sound on your computer, or it can pop up a message. And you get to decide. As for me, I generally have most notifications turned off. With calendar, so for example, in my Outlook calendar, I do have, usually for anything in my calendar, there's a 15-minute, before it's going to happen, I get a little reminder if my Outlook is open, but it doesn't make noises and it doesn't pop up on my phone. What's kind of funny is because we have this shared Google Calendar for my work and my phone is so connected to Google, I do see on my phone screen reminders of other people's activities, my coworkers' activities. So it will tell me that Liz Elena is meeting with Will at 10 o'clock or whatever, which is kind of funny. If I was using Google Calendar a lot and I was really paying attention to that, I might get it might become a little overwhelming and I'd want to go into my phone and deal with the settings so that I knew which calendars were showing up on my phone. So that's something to consider, right? We want to control, we don't want to be controlled by the devices or the tools. We want to decide very clearly in our minds how we want to be reminded or not be reminded. So that's just a little personal issue that I have. Okay, so we've talked about calendar. So here's a question, see if you can answer. So this is the kind of question they ask in the certificate exam. Which statement is true? Each calendar you create can have separate permissions and you can share settings. Or each calendar you create must all have the same permissions and you cannot share settings. Or each calendar you create can have separate permissions, but you can't share the settings. Or each calendar you create must have all the same permissions, but you can share settings. So we're going to call this A, B, C, D. Anybody have a guess which one they think is true? It's a little complicated. It might be easier for you to read than to hear me say it. Does anybody want to put an answer in the chat or unmute? So the big difference here is that there were permissions and there are settings. We didn't really spend a lot of time on this, but from what you saw, if I shared that Google Calendar, that Google Club Calendar with you, when I shared it with you, do you think that you get access to changing permissions and settings, or do you think that's is controlled? And I see A and B. So A is each calendar can have separate permissions and you can share settings. And B would be each calendar you create must have all the same permissions and you can't share settings. So they're almost the two opposite ones. And the answer is actually A. You get a lot of you actually can share both. So you can create separate permissions and you can share settings when you share your calendar. So you have that ability when you're sharing your calendar. All right, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on calendar. We're going to move on now to tasks. So we saw this very briefly when we were looking at that calendar view, that we have the ability up here to also see the tasks view, right? And again, now this is in the light version versus the dark version. So if I only have 3 lists of tasks, if I had 5, I'm guessing they would scroll left and right. I can also see what I have completed, which can be useful, right? Or I can delete them as I'm done with them. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it feels very nice to see what you've done that's completed, or sometimes it's helpful to know that it didn't just disappear. You did actually do it. So if we wanted to create a new list, we can do that here. When we're looking at each of our lists, we can add a task by clicking up here. This is again where we can put the date in. That'll show up on our calendar if this is connected to the calendar. And then you can check off the items as you do them. If this is something that you need to do several times, you need to click it. Maybe you want to list all the students' names and check off as you work on each of their assignment. You could do that here. We see that the starred item shows up here. And actually, I think, yeah, there's a view over here where you'll only see the starred items. So if it's helpful for you to empty your head and like just have everything laid out, but then you want to prioritize the next 2 or 3 things you're going to do, you can scroll over each one and star it, and then just look at the starred version, and that will help you sort of stay with your priorities. That's a technique I do on paper, and it'd be interesting to try it out on calendar or on tasks. Yeah, so that's what tasks does allow for. If you go into a task, you can add a subtask. So sometimes that's a helpful, I'm guilty of making lists on paper, especially where, I say, finish the project. And then it'd be very helpful to be able to go under that and break that down, right? So I need to do the research, I need to type it out, I need to get feedback, so you could have your subtasks underneath that item. You can delete it. You can create a new list here. I thought there was a way to, these already have yeah, these already have dates on them. So it has a date, has a time done, right? So if I want to control the notifications, I have to go to settings. And those are the general settings for all of this stuff. And the easiest way I know to do that is go back to calendar and click on the settings. And then down the side, I have a lot of different settings. So this is settings both for calendar and for tasks. So you may find them here as you need them. What I wanted to see, so yeah, you can pull events from Gmail, so notification settings. So this is where you can tell it, right, that it shows weekends. You can add the sound. Yeah, you can have a desktop notification pop up, which I'm going to do off on. So there's ways here where you can come in and change, and that's both for Gmail and for tasks. All right. So yeah, this is that toggling back and forth. Now we talked about the fact that we can go to calendar.google.com. Actually, if you type tasks.google.com, let's go up here and try that out. Oops, sorry. Not what I intended. Let's move this out of the way. All right, so if I go to a new tab and I type in tasks.google.com, will it work? So yes, it does take us there. It does change it to calendar.google.com and puts tasks at the end. But we know that we can use that technique, right? So we can still get to tasks very quickly if we just want to type it in. Yes, I'm going to put the survey link in right now. Thank you for asking for that. Let's go down here. This is the survey link. All right, thank you for being on that. Okay, so we've talked about calendar, we've looked at tasks, and now we're going to get to my favorite thing, which is Keep. So what do you see here? What are some things you notice? What do you think Keep lets you do? And I'm actually going to open up real Keep. So this is keep.google.com. So what do you think Keep does? Or what can you see here that gives you a tip or hints at certain ways of using it?
It's like Pinterest.
Right. So how is it like Pinterest?
Where you're tagging certain things and prioritize.
Nice, right? So if we look at Pinterest, which I do love, and you're not the first person to say that, Sean. So I like that you noticed it. So Pinterest is made up of lots. Oh, let's see if I can log in easily. I don't know if I can. Oh, there we go. So the way Pinterest works is it's mostly about images, but when you click on an image, you get, you can save it, you get some other information about it, right? But it's very image based. The other nice thing is as you click on the image, you sometimes go out to the actual place where the image came from. So it's a kind of a very nice way of finding, it's very visual though. With Google Keep, we had that, right? We had these little boxes and we definitely see some images here. What else do we see? So I think you mentioned tagging, right? We down the side here, we have a lot of different, they call it labels, but it's the same idea, right? So this has been true for us in I think we still talk about Web 2.0. So we had, when the internet first came on, there were other people who could create content and we just were were consumers of the content, and Web 2.0 was where we became creators of content. And when that happened, the ability to tag things, which we do in social media with a hashtag, or mention people by doing an @ in their name, that idea that we could help connect ideas and we could make something that other people could come back and find by tagging it became a very important part of what we do on the internet. But it's also an organizing technique, right? So in this case, this is my Google Keep. These are all of my notes. We're going to call them notes. You have a little box up here that I can just immediately start taking notes. I can also search for a note that I already took. And the search is rich. The search lets me do a word search. If I just type in the word eggplant, it immediately pulls up all of the, in this case, recipes I have with eggplant in them. You'll see that some of these are tagged as, so if I go back here and I get rid of that, if I go over here and I clicked on a tab, a label, I have a label that is recipe. Let's do lasagna, why not? So, I can also, if I've been really good at labeling things, I can do a search by clicking on the label on the side. But this will only work if I've given it the label. So the search is great. You see that I do a lot of recipes, but if we go back, if I get rid of this guy, and I just see all my notes, these ones, you see they have a little pin on them. So when you make a note, you have the option of pinning it, and pinning it means it stays at the top. I've done a lot of pinning, so I have quite a lot of stuff at the top. And then things that are not pinned are going to be below. See if we get to them. Yeah, these are still pinned. There we go. So these are the others that are not pinned. If I was doing this a little bit better, I probably would come in and unpin some of these things because it's kind of like favorites and I don't need it to be there. I can come back and find it later by searching. You can make your notes a different color. So you see I have here several that are all green, and I'm using that as an indicator to me that this isn't, what happens for me is I manage a lot of mailing lists and I want to be able to send a welcome message and I don't want to write it every time. So I've made it in Google Keep and I can just come in here and type in ALPN, and then I find that welcome message. I can copy and paste that into my email to send it out to people. So the green kind of helps me, but the main thing is I know I've labeled it ALPN and it has ALPN in it. And actually I also labeled it with mailing lists. So if I'm making a new note, I have the option of giving a title. So in this case, maybe it's going to be so if we look at what I use this for mostly, right? I have this running to-do list here. You see I have recipes. I have a movie star and all movies she's been in. I have another recipe. I have to-do lists for specific projects. I have links. Maybe I took notes during a meeting. So I have notes here, plans for a trip, another class I took, so some information there. Here's a to-do list with check boxes, right? Here's one where I added the photo. So again, because I end up doing a lot of this on my phone, Google Keep is an app that you can have on your phone or your tablet or even in my case, I have it as a desktop app as well. But right now we're looking at it through a browser. Um, the reason I think I have so many recipes is that what happens is I'm usually looking at recipes either on my phone or on my computer, and I copy the recipe, put it into Keep, and then when I'm out at the grocery store, I have the list of ingredients I need when I'm there. The syncing across devices is very, very quick. Another thing I like about Google Keep is it's pretty agnostic to your device. So we already had a little talk about calendars and how if you started with an iPhone, you're probably using iCal or the Apple Calendar. If you're using Microsoft at work, you might be using Outlook and maybe put Outlook on your phone. Google Keep does work across all devices regardless of brand or whatever. And the ability to take a photo or add a photo in can be very helpful as a demonstration. Let me just check the chat. Thank you, Nabiha. So one of the things, if I was to, let's see here, I'm going to take a note. Let me just check something for a second. I should have organized this. If I bring in, yeah, I was going to try and give you an example. I'm going to actually stop sharing for a second. I'm going to take us over to my work version of this so that it's a little less, has a little less in it, and it's a little easier to show you some examples. Let me. So with Google Keep, you have one Google Keep per account. And so what you were seeing before was the Google Keep that was developed using my personal or my Gmail version of Google account. And then this is the one that's associated with my work Google account. And I don't use it as much, so it's something I've kind of controlled here. So again, we see that we have the checkbox versions. Here we see actually that I can have other people, either they can send me a note or I can share a note with them, and we're both in here together and can use that together. So that's something you could use with learners. The thing I was just trying to show an example of, which is tricky to show, but in this case, I took a photo of this postcard, and I brought it into, so in my case, I take a photo with my camera, and then I can share the photo to Google Keep, or I can go to Google Keep and grab the photo out of my photos. And then I can ask Google Keep to pull all of the written content, all the written text from the printed document. So it's looking at this photo and grabbing everything that it sees as writing. And it can take a minute, but it grabs all of that text and puts it in here. And what was more amazing was that it also grabbed links. So things that in this printed document were links, it understood that and it made them into links here. Like, I don't know how it does it. So I don't know if you've had this experience, but like I've had the experience of walking down the street, seeing information, or being at a conference or somewhere, seeing information on a printed document that includes a link or something, or content that I want to capture, and I can take a photo of it, but I'm going to have to type it myself. This allows you to actually get their AI to grab text pretty well. You're going to have to review it to make sure it grabbed everything or understood everything the way you wanted it to. And now you have it as a something that you can copy and paste. You can also send notes from Google Keep to Google Docs. So you could start in Google Keep taking notes or whatever you are in a meeting, and then at the end you could send it or make it into a Google Doc. So that was an amazing way to use Google Keep. The image piece, when Sean mentioned Pinterest, this piece of adding images in there, that is, if you are sharing from in my case, I'm reading an article, I don't have time to finish the article, I save it to my Google Keep, which basically is just a link. So when I go to my Google Keep, it will have a title, but then it'll be a link out to the article. There it might bring in that little, I don't know if I have examples here. It might bring in a little image at the bottom. Let's look at this one. Yeah, it didn't do it for this one, but sometimes it'll show you a little picture at the bottom that just is a sort of hint at what the website will take you to. So if I'm here and I want to share so say I want to share this with you guys, right? When I'm here, I see at the bottom, I have a bunch of different actions I can take. We can kind of guess, right? We've probably seen some of these. Oh, good, my hand's raised. I'll change that in a minute. Um, you've seen some of these symbols before, so you can maybe guess that this is to do with notifications, right? The bell is generally a notifications tool. So I can have it remind me. So you can make a noise. I can have it remind me at a certain time or day, and I can pick a place. Now, this is one of the weirdest ones, and I've never used it, but the idea is very intriguing. So picking a place means that when I am in that location, and I do have to give it permission to connect with my location. So right now the settings don't do that, and I might want to, if I wanted to let that, I might say allow this time or while I'm on the site. And you could always come back and change that later. I generally don't have my location settings on. So in this case, we're going to allow it this time. And say I picked, let's try Queens. I'm going to put in a public library, see what happens. Okay, so I live pretty close to the Flushing one, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to click save. So now when I walk into that library based on my location, it's going to remind me. It's going to make either a noise or I don't know if we got to tell it what we want it to do. Let's see. Yeah, I think my phone will just make a noise or it'll pop up on my phone. So it will remind me. And so I haven't really figured out when that would be useful for me. I have a thought of it being useful in a grocery store, but not really because I'm going to go look at my recipe anyway. But it could be something interesting, right? Like maybe you want to note to yourself that we did have this one of my work locations where we wanted to make sure we turned our phones off so that they didn't ring. And I know there's some phones that have that setting in them, or there was another tool called If This Then That that also allowed you to do that. But basically, you could have it send you a little reminder, and you go read the note, and it reminds you to turn your phone ringer off or whatever. So you could have your learners do something like that, so that they know when they come to class they want to turn their ringer off, just as a practice for how this could be used, but also because you actually do want folks to turn off their ringers when they come into certain situations. All right, so we have the notification section. This, again, is another icon that you see quite often in Google, and it's a little person with a plus sign. And in this case, you see as I scroll over, it says collaborator. So if I wanted to share this with other people, I can type in their email addresses. And you really want to be using their Gmail addresses. So you'd want to know who the other person is, each of your learners or whoever you're sharing it with. I'm going to go ahead and cancel that one. We have the option of changing the colors. We also have some backgrounds. That's all. There's no other choices there. So you can't upload your own images. You can add an image. So this is where this image would have come from. I've seen very playful. So actually, if you go to Pinterest, I think you'll probably find some Google Keep lesson ideas where they've made Google Keep very visual. So every note has an image, and the image tells you what the note's going to be about, and it becomes a shared space for learners to come in and locate specific information that they're looking for, or they make it for themselves. So every message can have an image, and you'll have the image at the top. If you have more than one image, it will only show one of them when you're seeing the whole catalog of notes. You can archive it. So it's not deleted, but it's sitting in your archive. And we can see down the side here that there's automatically an archive box or folder and a trash folder. So you have that option. And then the three dots, we can remove myself. If I shared this with somebody else and I don't want to be part of it anymore, I can remove myself. I could change the labels. I can add a drawing. So you actually can draw inside here as well. That would have happened under the images piece. You can make a copy, show checkboxes, grab image text. So that's the part I was talking about earlier. So in this case, I would have done grab image text. report abuse, copy to Google Docs. That's also what I mentioned, that this whole thing can now go to Google Docs. If I do that, it's copying it to Google Docs. And I can open the doc from here. And now I could say where it should go, right? So right now it's just in my drive. So I'm going to want to, I can check here. And it's saved in my drive. I can see that here. It's going to suggest some places for me, and we all know we've done this a few times that I can go here to all locations and make a new folder if I wanted to do that. So you'd want to make sure you organized it, right? But it grabbed the title of the document and the image and then the writing from the document. So Google Docs are lovely, and you actually can write Google Docs quite well on your phone, but I would say Google Keep is an easier tool on your phone. So it might be something where you would take notes in some situation on Google Keep, and then you'd want to move it into Google Docs for you to do something more with it. Maybe you're sharing it with colleagues or learners. So again, device-wise, I think Google Keep is really well designed for a small screen, and it might be easier to use for note-taking or saving articles when you're reading partially on waiting for the bus and you want to save that article for later. Doing all that on your phone with Google Keep is very easy. And then when you get to work, you can open up your Google Keep and decide if it's something that you want to do something else with or manage in a different way. All right, so back to Keep. And then there's version history. So if you were sharing this with someone else, this would let you, or yourself, you made some changes and you wanted to see what had happened, you could get back to older versions because it just automatically saves. And I think that's all the changes that are made. All right, so that's closed there. You can reorder. So we have these pins, which will automatically make things stay at the top. But other than that, you can move everything around. So you could decide, this is really important today because this is the thing I'm working on. So I want that to be up here. But then tomorrow, maybe it's going to be this one. So you can move things around very easily inside there. If I make a note and I'm going to call it to do, and then I come in here and I write buy milk, sharpen pencils. So right now there's no formatting. That's actually a new thing in Google Keep, is that there is formatting. So if I highlight these, I can now show checkboxes. And if I scroll over this, I should be able to get formatting. Let's see. Nope, not seeing as an option. Maybe it's under this. No. So formatting just lets you do a little bit more managing of how things look. But anyway, maybe, yeah. Anyway, I thought you could. To indent, drag the item. Okay, whatever. Got it. So then as I get done with things, so first of all, another thing we know about Google, when you see those little dots on the left there, that tells you, and you see my cursor also changes to the four-way arrow, which we also know means moving. I could reorder these. And then as I'm done with them, I click the box and they come down here. And I can get rid of them all together, but this way I kind of know, what I've completed. I wanted to add an image. Yeah, so then I have to have the image somewhere, and generally that's more likely to be on my phone than here. So I don't often add images here. Let's do something though. We can do that. Sure, we'll add another one of my Bitmojis. Okay, we'll close it. So now we have my to-do list. If you live with other people and you want to make a grocery list or something that is shared, I tried doing that with my brother-in-law once at Thanksgiving. But he had to download Google Keep. It was very frustrating. It didn't really make sense. But if this is something ongoing, and the other people or person has a Google Keep, you certainly could create a grocery list that is shared between the two of you, and both of you could be adding to it. And that way, when you're at the store, you have all the things that people want to get. Any questions about Google Keep? Anyone using Google Keep? It feels like one that people who know about it use it a lot, but then there are lots of people who've never heard of it. Anybody anything to say about Google Keep?
I still don't think I get it. How do you use it for your students, or how could I, encourage them to use it?
So the thought with learners, I think, is that I would create, or they would create a note, and that they would share it with me. So we would have a shared space together. But it's more with the idea that then you think that Google Keep is a valuable tool for them to know about, and they would be using it on their own. So it's not, to me, if I was a teacher, I might introduce Google Keep and I might highly recommend it to my learners, and then I'd want to think of ways to use it. So the way I would use it, I would create a note, share it with Susan, share another one with Ramon. The two of us would share one note each, and in there I might put, a special assignment or something that for them is worth going back to look at. And then maybe also giving them a homework assignment where they learn that they could take notes. So they're out in the world, and where do they see? I'm thinking of these activities I've seen where, like, there's a number of the day, for example. So you're teaching math and you want everyone to come back with an image of a number that, today's number is 14. That could be done through Google Keep, but all of that with the goal that Google Keep itself is a tool that they should be thinking about using. If you don't find a use of it for yourself, probably I'd let it go. Like, I don't think it's an educational tool per se. I think it's more of a productivity tool. But I think as a teacher, you could teach the use of the productivity tool by incorporating it into instruction, if that makes sense, Lauren. Because you're right, it's not built as it is not, there are many other tools that are better purely for instruction. This is more of the idea that this is a tool in your own life that you might find useful, and to practice. It's kind of like email, right? Like, email is not really an educational tool. We kind of think it's important, so we want to make sure that people feel able to use it. To do that, we can create some lessons that incorporate Gmail or Google or email, whatever. But the goal is that the learner finds how that will then be useful for them in their lives. So that's what I would say. So you're right. It's not built to be educational tool. We are bending it to our will. But with the idea that it's important. Like, again, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like there were many of you who do use a calendar, and it's an electronic calendar based on your work or your device that you have. How do you take notes? Are you all got little envelopes that you write on the back of, or notebooks, or how do you take notes out in the world? And you can put it in the chat if you want to. Right? So Michael, yes, you use the app notebook depending on the situation, right? So sometimes I definitely am the same. I have my notebook here, and when I'm in a meeting that I know I'm going to, I have my notebook, and I probably prefer writing it down. But if I'm out in the world, then I know I have my phone, and I'll probably use my phone. Or if I am taking the bus to work and I'm thinking about all the things I need to do, putting it on my phone is very useful, more useful than handwriting probably, because it's a little bumpy on the road. And as I said, have a Pixel phone. I'm already in the Google world, but Google Keep, I think I would use regardless of what tools I have. So I have an iPad, and I would still use Google Keep on there. But if you're very familiar with your Notes app, on an iPhone, that's fantastic. Oh, I like it, Lauren. So you use WhatsApp voice notes. I love it. So do you find that then you listen to those voice notes and write them down, or that's just enough for you to have, by virtue of making that voice note, you remember the thing you needed anyway? What do you do with your voice notes? Yeah. So you say enough to hear it sometimes, and sometimes it's just enough to do it, right? Like just the virtue of saying it out loud into your device will make sure that you remember it. And I think that the voice note thing is also really important for learners. Like I think that, again, productivity is for all of us. So you as a teacher, in this case, you're just another human being, and your learners are other human beings, and there's trying to figure out how do we keep track of the things that are important, and how do we, get back to things that we need to get back to. So these particular tools today were all about tracking tasks associated with time, and these are the ones that Google has, and they are they have particular riches to them, but there are many other versions out there. No one's mentioned Evernote. Um, so Marika asks, is a voice note on WhatsApp different from sending yourself a voicemail on WhatsApp? Lauren, are you able to unmute and explain more?
Oh, I think I meant the same thing. It just I just use the voice part so I can listen to myself. And if I need to even like make a video, sometimes I make videos and remind myself of something. It's just yeah.
So you just it would be like record. So on because with WhatsApp, when I open it up, I can, so you're calling yourself and leaving a voicemail. Is that what you're doing?
Yes, it lets you have yourself as one of the contacts. So yeah,
Gotcha.
like if I'm sending YouTube videos to my friends,
Yeah.
I'll send it to myself first, and maybe I'll wait. Like, okay, don't send 17 videos right now. Send it to yourself, and then you can go back and see. I can go back and comment and say what I wanted to say when I have time to send it.
Very nice. So yes, Marika, I think that is the same. So it's sending yourself a voicemail, basically.
You literally will see yourself. It will say me in the contacts, like, and it has your phone
Yes,
number.
I've used it that way just to text myself, but I haven't used the voice part. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, this is a little along the lines of emailing ourselves, right? Like, which is another technique that we've probably all used at times to get something to ourselves in a different device or come back to it later.
I
Anybody else?
definitely do that email one to have it to kind of get the email at the top of the list. Sometimes when you decide the starred reminder, if I want to see
Yes.
it, like today I went to take a test and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't find the paper. Should have sent it to myself. It would have been the first email that I would have seen.
Exactly. So I feel like this is quite often, right? Like I think I went back to the paper calendar because I had one or two experiences where my calendars didn't sync electronically, and the thing I needed when I was out in the world I couldn't get to. And so I still back myself up with a paper version. And I think that we often have come up with techniques for that, right? So having it in your email and knowing that it's there is sort of a sense of security. And we do feel like we can get to that kind of anywhere we want to, but then knowing that we can star things. So this is where, again, like Google Keep might be where I might put that. Certainly I do a lot. What I find myself doing quite often is if I need something, like today, I had a meeting in my Outlook calendar that had a Zoom link in it, and I was going to do the Zoom call on my iPad, and I was nervous that my Outlook calendar wouldn't have synced properly, so the Zoom link might not be there. So I put the Zoom link in my Google Keep as my backup because I knew that Google Keep would sync really well and I would be able to find that link. And even then I had to do some weird stuff because I hadn't used Google Keep for a while on my iPad. But it is, so we, noticing that about ourselves, right? That we've found ways to try to make information available where we need it, when we need it, and we have backups or we have techniques that generally work. That is a place, though, where I think thinking about possibly, that you might need a new tool, right? That the thing you're doing is great, but it's not the most efficient or it's not as automated. then you have to trust it. One of the things I didn't show you in Calendar is that you can set up, I don't know if you've seen Calendly or these other tools where basically you attach your calendar to this scheduling app or tool, and then you can give people a link and they can select a time within your acceptable times to set up a meeting with you. I have it in my email signature that you could set up a time with me in Calendly, which is connected to my calendar. So whenever there's free time between certain hours, if you were to go to my Calendly, you would find that time listed and you could sign up for half an hour. Calendly is free, and there's certain things, I mean, you can pay for Calendly for a more advanced version, but the Google version is also free. And if you're already using Google Calendar, it might be a way to go. I think Outlook is also doing it. I don't know if I trust it yet, though, right? So some of these things we need to do for a little while before we know if we really believe that they work. Lauren says that she sees reminders on her phone and hear the notifications and ignore, but sometimes seeing it in a physical calendar helps. I used to have paid it. Yeah, exactly. So we know these. Often I think we learn because of something failing, and then we have to come up with a new system for it or a new backup. But yes. Anybody else, any other tools that you use that kind of do what we were talking about today? Like any specific calendar ways or taking notes or tracking tasks? And if you've noticed with your learners that this is something that's a challenge for them, like I think if this can be, I was talking to my sister and brother who both have children in school about when do they teach study skills, because it was feeling like a really big challenge for a couple of them on like, how do you schedule your time? How do you knowing that you have a project due in several days, like how do you plan that out if you've never been shown? And I think again, if school was difficult for you, or maybe you come from another country where the access to digital devices is not as common, or just from your life that you haven't been as exposed to these productivity tools, it is something for us to demonstrate and help our learners know they exist. But it is very personal, I think, what each of us like. Michael says, to track my classes, I write little notes on my printouts, like cover this next class on Wednesday. Yeah, there you go. So these little notes are written directly on the printouts of your lessons, which makes sense, right? Yeah, I'm thinking more like I definitely do the thing where I take the bus into work and I have time then to think through all of the things, like I mentioned, like that kind of dump of all the things I possibly have to do. And that's something I'll do on my phone and I'll do in Google Keep. And then when I get to work, I can open up my Google Keep on my computer and have that list sitting there beside me and reorder it. I will say when I'm working remotely, I'm mostly doing the same thing on paper. I don't need that intermediary step. I just wouldn't write when I'm on the bus, I guess. Excellent. Okay, well, we're gonna run out of time. I'm gonna put the link to our evaluation in the chat. And I will be putting this recording up on YouTube and also in our blog, along with the slides. I'll also send all that out to you guys. Yeah, and if you find yourself with any questions, so basically we covered all the things that are required when you take the certificate. We do include in the slides, you'll see there's some resources of places to go and learn more about using these tools. And then there's lots and lots of YouTube videos. So one thing I'll just say about the YouTube videos, just pay attention to when they were made, because some things have changed a lot. So you do want to go with videos that are closer to now. If they say G Suite in them, then they're old. So try them out. You have these things automatically. So just by having a Google account now, if you go to keep.google.com, you have Google Keep. Same with Tasks, same with Calendar. So it's worth checking them out once, as long as you're logged into Google. They'll pop up if you type them in, and then you can see if it if it feels like it's not going to fit your life at all, then you let it go, but you know where it is and you know they exist. So thank you all for your participation and for being interested in Googly stuff, and I hope to see you all next month. The name of the lecture, you can just put in Google Club Meeting 4. We can go with short. So Google Club Meeting 4, thank you for asking. And I look forward, like I said, to seeing you. Next month we are doing, I don't even think I said what it was, but anyway, I'll include that in the email that I sent out. I don't think it said what the tools were, but I'll include that in my description. All right, take care, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you in February. And if you have questions in the meantime, of course, feel free to contact me.